Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I am joined by my co-host, Michael Hall. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. The title of tonight's episode is The Browns Preview. So we thought we'd bring in staff writer, good friend of this show, longtime friend, Mr. Zach Selby. How are you doing on this beautiful Wednesday evening, sir?
Well, I wouldn't call it beautiful.
I was going to say, it might be beautiful where you're at, but it ain't around here.
Well, it's beautiful because the Commanders are 3-1 and to the top of the NFC East. Come on, guys. You got glass half full here, boys. But
beautiful in a larger perspective, yeah, but the day itself is not beautiful.
It's a beautiful day every day that happens, Selby. But we don't have much time with you. So I want to kind of break down this game against the Browns. In your opinion, how can Washington continue to have success against the Browns defense, given with Myles Garrett coming to town, who has 4 sacks so far this year?
You know, honestly, I think they need to run the ball a lot. You know, I was looking at some of the film from the Browns against the Raiders, the Giants, and some of the other teams they played last 2 weeks. I've noticed that it's definitely not the defense of old expected from the Browns. You know, the feisty group that kind of kept them in the playoffs in the last couple of years. I really think that they have a few critical weaknesses. I think they allow some pretty decent chunk plays on the ground, and I think their linebackers really get sucked into play action a lot. Also, like on the edge, like near the numbers, they seem like they give up a lot of plays in that area. So while I think this is going to be a really tough test for Washington's offense, I think you also have to remember that this is the Browns' toughest test for their defense too, because this is by far the best offense that the Cleveland have played so far. The Raiders kind of didn't necessarily have their number, but they had some significant plays against them. You know, the Giants also did the same, and then the Cowboys, they were able to, you know, put up 30 plus points against them. So I think a lot of doing what they've been doing the last 2 weeks, running the ball, doing a lot of play action, and letting Jaden take these shots whenever necessary.
Yeah, and obviously the Browns defense is 13th in the NFL right now in sacks, pressuring 2.8 a game. Sorry, Hall.
Yeah, so it's been a pretty successful first quarter of the season, and a lot of fans are, you know, kind of like because of the past years and all the other stuff, but kind of just waiting for that other foot to drop and for them to have a bad outing and then for to get blown out or something crazy to happen. And I just think that this coaching staff and them have this team grounded. So how do you think this team is going to handle the success now that they're like the talk of the NFL and the darlings of the national media and whatnot?
Well, you know, that was a topic that was brought up a lot in the locker room today, and I even wrote a story about it on Commanders.com. But I really don't think that this team is going to be bothered by it all that much. It looks like they're very level-headed about their success. And if you want to look for any example, just look no further than Jay Daniels, who's had more success than anybody else on that team, or at least as much. And he's very much like, hey, like it's just another game. Like that was last week's stuff that we're focused on this week. And that is the mentality that's really been infectious for this entire roster. And you also remember that a lot of these veterans, they remember a time when, you know, back in 2018, this team started 6-3, and then everything just fell apart for various reasons. Going, you know, 7-9 and missing the playoffs and getting out of the lead in the NFC East. So they're very aware that the NFL can turn pretty quickly, and but they're very much focused on one game at a time. And I think that's been the right approach for them so far. It's worked out for them because I don't think they expect anything out of, you know, I don't think they expect to win. It's not a team that and I think they know they can't afford to overlook anybody either. Like, even though as great as this team has been so far, they've got some they've still got some weak that other teams pose, including the Browns. So I think they're very much like they're taking themselves seriously, but they're not, you know, getting too caught up in all the noise or letting the rest of us sort of worry about that.
My man. To wrap this up, Selby, only a couple more questions for you. To elaborate, Jaden Daniels, his best quote from the presser today was saying that, you know, people will think the opposite if things go downhill. in the future, right? And so he totally gets it, man. This is just a young man that's very wise beyond his years. He just understands the situation. But today, Washington opened up the 21-day practice window for Jordan McGee, F.A. Obata, Marcus Mariota, and they also placed Jamison Crowder on IR with a long injury report today from the Commanders. Do you expect any of those guys to be called up to play right away, or do you think this is more of they're going to allow them to work their way back?
Well, I don't necessarily think that those two things are related, right?
Okay.
Like I think Wednesday reports are sort of not necessarily they lie, but like you need to take the context, right? Like it's the first day of the week. Like you really need to be more worried about if they should if they're limited or DMPs on Thursday or Friday. Then I think that's really what you need to be more concerned about. But especially with as the season goes on, you're going to get a lot of injuries that maybe you're gonna give them a little more rest than others. I mean, Nick Allegretti, for example, with the ankle, like it didn't seem like they were too concerned about that. Now,
Okay.
maybe he plays, maybe he didn't play, but it didn't seem like they're too worried about it. And I think, and the other thing too is like both McGee, Mariota, and Obata were all full participants today. So
Okay.
I mean, and that's a good sign. That's a very good sign, especially with Obata when you didn't really know exactly when that injury was going to be was going to recover. Same thing with McGee. I wouldn't be surprised if they were all called up to the active roster soon. But I don't think it has anything to do with them being injured at other positions. I think it's just these players are ready for the next step in their recovery, and it could. I think they can definitely all three of them can help out in their own ways.
Perfect answer. Exactly what I wanted you to say. Do you expect Austin Eckler to be good to go this week?
It seems like it. It seems like he. I mean, he certainly seems like he's expecting to go. We talked to him today outside the locker room, and he was very. He said he felt great. I think he said he's going to do a padded practice tomorrow. I think that's right. So don't quote me on that. I do believe that he's coming along well. I mean, he wore the no contact jersey today, which is another sign that he's coming along. He's ready to be at least on field activities. And like as great as Jeremy McNichols was, like I mean, Austin Eckler is still one of the best in his position, has been for the last 10 years or so. They need him. They definitely do need him, and I think he's going to be a big piece of this offense moving forward. So yeah, I think he's trending in the right direction.
Yeah, Austin in that Bengals game on Monday night, making something out of nothing on some of those dump offs, just being
Yeah.
able to produce first downs. Obviously his the benefit of having him is immeasurable at this point. Last question that I have for you, Selby. And going against the Browns, one area that Washington has to improve in order to be put in a good position to be successful.
Offensively or defensively, or does it matter?
Doesn't matter.
I think running the ball has to be the biggest one, right? Like the Browns again, they're not the team of old because of partly because of Nick Chubb being out, and Naheem Hines. They're both they're both designated to return, but we don't know when they're going to be out there. They're averaging less than 100 yards per game on the ground. And that's partly because their offensive line is so banged up. But this defensive line is still they had some improvements for sure. And you could blame some of the runs that the Cardinals had just because the game was out of hand and they were playing a different style. I mean, the running game is still a big problem for them. And I think that the Browns are going to try to exploit that. So. I think that really is going to affect the way the entire defense plays. Honestly, if they're getting gassed up the middle, and it's going to open up the playbook for the Browns, and Deshaun Watson as off people as are about him, I think he's still got some of the elite playmaker inside in him that shows himself every now and again. So stopping the run, I think, is going to be key for them. It's going to limit Cleveland's offense, which is going to want to do that a lot. And if they can do that, they can keep Deshaun Watson in the pocket. I think they've got a very good chance of having a second really good game and building something defensively.
Yeah, and to your point, Cleveland right now is 26th in rushing yards, averaging 94.8 rushing yards per game. And the Commanders' defense is 23rd defensively in rushing yards, allowing 136.5 yards per game on average. Selby, I can't thank you enough for joining us. Real quick, if you'd like to plug your social media handle, just in case anybody watching hasn't followed you yet and would like to, brother.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter/X, whatever y'all want to call it, at Twitter, at Zach Selby WC. You can find me on Instagram as Zach Selby. Yeah, and you can find all the Commander/Baking news that you could ever want.
My man. Selby, enjoy your class, enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you again soon, hopefully, brother.
Appreciate
All
it.
right, see y'all.
See you, brother. All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Zach Selby. Always appreciate his time.
Yes,
We will
sir.
be joined by another guest here very, very soon. But to preview this Cleveland Browns game, Hall, obviously we're going in hot and heavy offensively into this game. Jaden Daniels once again won the FedEx Ground and Air Player of the Week. And so that's what his fourth award so far. So 4 weeks, 4 awards. But that being said, what is your biggest concern going against the Browns?
Um, I think like Selby kind of hit on what I'm most concerned about. I think it's just them getting gashed in the run game, them giving up big chunks in the run game, because even though they're not really averaging a lot of rushing yards per game, as we both know, the key to a productive offense, an efficient offense, is getting that running game going and that
No way.
play action, opening that up over the middle, and yeah. So obviously, like Deshaun, like you said, Deshaun Watson isn't the Deshaun Watson of old when he was with the Houston's a top five guy, but he still has the uh, the ability to, especially if you get the run game going, the play action going. He has the ability to look down the field. Amari Cooper is still no slouch in this league.
Yep, I
Jerry
was going
Judy
to
is
say
a great
that.
route. Yeah, Jerry Judy's a great route runner and can create some separation down the field. Really fast dude as well. So they definitely need to hold up the run game so that they can't get the downfield play action game going, because they have two wide receivers that can definitely hurt us on the back end.
Yeah, what's really crazy looking at this game is in like with 42 less passing attempts, Jaden Daniels has thrown for nearly 200 more yards than Deshaun Watson at this point. But that being said, his weapons offensively are not in a limited capacity whatsoever. He still has David Ojoku, who
Yeah, I
is
was
a
gonna say, Njoku might be back this week, I think too.
he's a freak of nature, of course. Jerry Judy is our leading receiver right now. He's up there with like Terry McLaurin type numbers. I think like 200 yards receiving he has at the moment. Then you brought up Amari Cooper. I mean, we've seen that guy go on Washington time and time again. So it's really going to be a test offensively. My biggest concern, I think it is running the football, but it's offensively, especially with Nick Aligati possibly having an ankle issue. I don't like question his toughness or anything like that. The reason why I gave him a nickname All I Got It, because he's gonna keep going in there and fighting. But
Honestly, I thought you just like pronounced his name wrong. I was
no,
like,
no, that's why I said that on Twitter the other day. You didn't see that?
yeah, you're right.
So like it's having that running game, because yes, obviously the Cleveland Browns are a good offense. They have very good weapons. They could be getting Nick Chubb back this week. That's something that could really help them. We talked about that on Sunday night, saying against Washington somehow these players somehow find a way back, right?
Yeah.
And so as important it is to keep that offense off the field, I think running the football and having those long sustained drives, like they've done a great job the past 2 weeks of winning the time possession, converting on third downs. On Sunday, they converted 9 of like 12 on third downs. Being able to have that running game to keep those distances short is going to be monumental in this football game. And that's going to help out our defense on the back end. So those guys, Bobby Wagner and company, they can absolutely be able to rest, chill. And I think that was a direct correlation to the kind of uptick in production that we saw from our defensive line, where Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Dorrance Armstrong, all were getting in the mix there and getting out to the quarterback, because they weren't overly worked, right? Like we saw in the Bucks game, where our defense was on the field a heck of a whole lot when they shouldn't have been, right? And so I think running the football and demanding and commanding that time of possession is going to be key in this game, and the running the football really correlates with that. Last thing I want to see is Jaden having to sit back there 30 times, trying to be able to get something going offensively, and then Myles Garrett just pinning his ears back, because he's a freak of nature, man. And that's one of those guys that you do not want to allow to just be able to go at will on you. Obviously, one of my favorite draft prospects, DeJuan Jones, is playing right tackle for the Browns, and he's on the injury report himself. But that is a big human. And as much as he is big, he is athletic, and he is a tough son of a
Yep.
gun. So our defensive line is going to have their monies. They're going to earn their paycheck this week, going against going against that offensive line because they're no slouch. Obviously, they got a couple tackles there on the injury report, but I'm not overlooking them. But my biggest concern is that running game in order to help out the entirety of the offense. But side off of that, on our injury report, Noah Brown apparently was limited with a groin injury. Same with Percy Butler. And that's a big concern because very well groin injuries can linger. And that's something that can hamper guys. As much as you say it's limited right now, in the game on Sunday they could play, and that could turn worse, that groin injury. We've seen that time and time again with NFL players with all the movement and physicality that they are doing. So it is a big, big concern for me. Anything else?
Yeah, no, you pretty much hit on it. Like Selby said, I don't want to like keep repeating what he said, but the Wednesday report, like it's kind of like, okay, give guys a rest day or whatever it may be. Just they got to add it to the list.
Arch said this something similar, basically that the padded practice is way more important in terms of not being able to play or not, and that's gonna be the big indicator to Selby and your point.
Yeah, so I'm like, obviously the injury report is important, but I just kind of wait till Friday when they put it out to kind of see like, or maybe even Thursday to kind of see like who's on there, who's not, or like he said, who was limited, who's a DNP. So while it is, like you said, definitely a little alarming because even if they are good to go, anything could happen. They step on the field, even if they're warming up before pregame, something could happen. They could tweak it. So yeah, definitely. But the good thing is, it seems that we have that's one of our most depthful, if that's even a word, positions on the field. Yeah, it is now. As far as the safety position goes, that's our most depthful position on the field. So like, even if Percy Butler can't go or has something wrong, I have faith that some guys in the back end will hopefully be able to fill in.
That's the second time we've heard that word tonight, so maybe we'll hear it 3 or 4 more times. Beat that into the earth until it becomes one.
Hey, so you got to do it.
Shout out to our boy Deuce, Red Zone in the Lab. I want to ask this question to you because he brought it up on Twitter today, and it's a fantastic question. If David Njoku does play, who would you be putting on to cover David Njoku?
That's a good question. I mean, I would hope that a guy like Percy Butler would be able to, just with how athletic he is, would be able to hopefully man up with him from time to time. But depending on where he's lining up, maybe a guy like Mikey Sammers still. But even though he's kind of like smaller, he plays bigger than his height.
Has been playing outside as well.
What's up?
He's been playing outside as well.
Yeah, so I'm saying he's been playing outside lately. But yeah, I would say maybe a guy like. Trying to think. Oh, Quan Martin. I forgot about Quan Martin. I feel like a guy like Quan Martin who's play down in the box, play the tight end position pretty well, cover him down the field. He has the speed to obviously stay with Njoku, and I feel like hopefully if he's in man coverage with him, he'll be able to out physical him for the ball or something like that. But yeah, maybe a guy like Percy Butler or Quan Martin, I think, would be able to do that job hopefully.
I would like to see Bobby get into the mix of just abrupting him. Like possibly just as soon as he crossed that line, because you're allowed contact within the first 5 yards. If he comes out, let Bobby hit him a little bit, stop that line of motion. But I would love to see Jeremy Chin lined up on him. Jeremy Chin had one heck of a game on Sunday. He was flying all over the field, making plays on special teams defensively after watching the film. But one of my favorite plays of the day on Sunday was it was a third down. It was the incompletion to their tight end. I forget their backup tight end's name. But
like Wiggins or Higgins or something like that.
So I think is it Rondale Moore? Is he still with them?
It was Greg Dortch, the smaller guy.
Number 4?
Yeah, it was Dortch.
So Dortch does a crossing route right behind our defensive line on third down. And Bobby Wagner, because Sanders still gets caught up in that kind of mesh kind of thing, so he has to go wide. He has to go uphill. He has to go around guys. So he has probably at least 7 yards of separation between him and Dortch. And Bobby Wagner literally steps in front of him and just grabs him and stops him completely to the point where Kyler Murray has to throw to that tight end for an incompletion and get off the field. Like that kind of play just shows Bobby Wagner's intellect. Just knowing that you're in that 5-yard cushion, they can't say anything about defensive holding at that point because guess what? You're in that 5 yards. If you run that shallow route, that's what's going to happen to you. And so I think that's why I was saying about Bobby Wagner kind of abrupting David Njoku in that little space. Not too grabby, but just be able to impede his progress a little bit. that would help out immensely, in my personal opinion. So I think Jeremy Chin has the physical and speed to be able to keep up with David Njoku. He's a bigger guy, but he is freaking fast, man. We've seen him over the past couple weeks. His speed has really gotten up to speed, so to speak, and he's been looking really, really good. And so I think Jeremy Chin would be a really good idea to bring in there. I wouldn't run out of the possibility of Jamin Davis, like just being that Sam linebacker randomly, but I wouldn't. Honestly, I think he should continue putting his hand in the dirt and get after the quarterback, but I'm just spitballing at this point. Now, the next question I have for you, dude, the D-line, do you think that they're going to continue to have success in this game?
Well, it depends what your definition of success is, because John Connor had
James Conner.
James Conner. Yeah, I was like, it
I
doesn't
was
sound
watching I was watching Terminator 2
right.
clips today, and so it's funny you say
Yeah,
that.
I said it twice, and I was like, that still doesn't sound right. But yeah, James Conner, obviously had a hell of a game, over 100 yards, a touchdown. They were getting gashed up the middle, and so yeah. But obviously, but on the flip side of that, once the offense got up a little bit, which is why I said sometimes your offense can be your best defense, because now they got to throw the ball to get back into the game. Now the defensive linemen, okay, they can run the ball on us all they want. They got to put points on the board. They got to throw it eventually. When they do, we can get after the passer a little bit. So, and they're going to obviously have to pass the ball a little bit more than they're going to be running the ball at that point once they're down, so they can try to get themselves back into the game as fast as possible. So, um, I would say success to me would be holding a guy like Jerome Ford to not a career type of day for him or something to that effect. That would be success for me. So if they can do that, not give up 100 yards on the ground to one specific person, like I know Deshaun Watson is going to get outside the pocket. He's going to get a couple yards of himself running the football as well. So if they can just give up less than 80 yards total to a running back, I would say that's success to me so
I
far, and obviously get a couple sacks as well.
Dan Quinn highlighted this in his press conference yesterday, saying the defensive line did a very good job of containing Kyler Murray, and I think that's a lot having to do with the success there and being able to bring him down. Ultimately, that's where I attribute the success to it, being able to bring down Kyler Murray, and that's what I really want to hamper on here. Sometimes in those big runs, it's not more so of the defensive line not doing their jobs. It's much more so of just putting the wrong move on somebody in a split second. And like Fedarian Mathis having his head down on one run that gets blown right by him. And it's ultimately like the combo of the linebacker slash defensive line being on the same page. And so I do think that they need to get better in that aspect as much as they are doing a better job at containing the quarterback. I think I think to your point, it's going to be very important for them to contain the running game. And like we saw that a couple years ago, they were stout against the run. They were able to really bind things up offensively and force running backs to run into that wall. We're not seeing that that much this year, but hopefully that can come back here against the Browns, because especially if Nick Chubb plays, you cannot
Well,
give those wide receivers and that quarterback time to throw and time after the catch.
exactly. And I think it goes more into, like, as the defensive ends kind of get more comfortable rushing with Jonathan Allen and Mathis and Payne and those guys, and Johnny Newton getting healthier and healthier week by week, and learning more pass rush moves and learning how to attack the person in front of him week by week more and more with experience. I think that with the edges getting more involved in that, they're going to be see less double teams with the guys on the interior taking up the defensive tackles, because now if the guys on the edge start getting involved in the game, then those guards, maybe they got to start chipping the edges, which frees up the guys in the middle to maybe win their one-on-one battles. So yeah, I think that hopefully as they gel more, just like offensive line, defensive linemen got to play together and gel together
It's true.
to get those rushes together, to know how each other rush or whatnot. So hopefully,
Had to
as
be
they
said.
continue their defensive progression, hopefully they'll get better and better week by week.
I totally agree with you. Before we start answering fan questions, oh man, I had a. Oh no, here I got it. Before we start answering fan questions, I want to ask you this one last time. One player that doesn't get talked about a lot that will have a big game on Sunday.
Doesn't get talked about a lot. I would say that needs to have a big game on Sunday, or that will.
Or that will. Either or, whichever way you want to
Yeah,
answer that.
I'll say, even though they get talked about, but I would say like it's probably good that they don't get talked about a lot because that means they're probably getting beat a lot. But I would say the left tackles, whether it's Lucas, Coleman, whoever gets the split of the reps, the combo of Lucas and Coleman, the law firm, I would say is the most because obviously you got like we talked about Myles Garrett, he's a game wrecker, top two, one or two in the league, defensive end. You can say him or TJ Watt's the best, whatever you want to call it, but just probably one of the best game, if not the best game wrecker in the league. Can rush from either side of the tackles, but mostly will line up on that right side and come off the edge on the left tackle. So this is going to be the toughest test so far for Lucas and Coleman. And so yeah, I think that those guys, if they have a average to above average game, don't let Myles Garrett be a game wrecker. I think that'll go a long way for this offense being productive.
And to your point, I would also add Andrew Wiley into
Yeah,
that
because
breath.
he lines up on the other side as well. They move him
Right.
all over. So yeah,
Um, I'll give one for each. I think John Bates has to have a big game. I think
chip game's going to be big.
exactly. So I think Cliff Kingsbury did a very good job with this against Arizona, deploying those tight ends to act as the chip and then to escape upfield, to give just extra time for the offensive line to gain on those defensive ends, especially going against Myles Garrett, like you already expertly said. So I think John Bates is going to be crucial, and especially in setting those edges. So seeing that Jeremy McNichols touchdown run with a toe tap to the end zone, Ben Sinnott gets on the outside. He's able to push out the safety or the corner there. Had a crucial block in that sense. And so I think setting those edges, being able to be productive in the run game is really going to come at the dividends in the production of the tight ends in the blocking game. I think that it really is going. I think they really deserve a lot of credit for how they've done so far. They have been blocking their ass off, and they don't get that many receptions, right?
Yeah.
But they have been in there, been grinding and moving guys off the ball as much and helping that offensive line out as much as they can.
And no, go ahead. Keep going.
Secondly, I would say Emmanuel Forbes. I think Emmanuel Forbes has to have has to have a good game because I think that he's somebody that they are going to possibly go after. And so, depending on what that matchup will be, like I was going to make a joke and say, "What you're not going to say Emmanuel Forbes on David Njoku? What's wrong? What's wrong with you? Come on!" But I think Emmanuel Forbes is somebody that could have a good game just based on past deflections and just playing smart football in that breath. Like he was very close to a couple pass deflections where he was aggressive to the ball. You want to continue to see that. I didn't see him hanging his head at all. And hopefully with the success of the team, that confidence in him starts building again.
Right. And to your point about the tight ends, like I saw on Twitter a clip with Dan Orlovsky that he posted with him and Swagoo, and they were talking about it was the first drive coming out right after the second beginning of the second half, got the ball, and how they came out in 13 personnel, 12 personnel. It was like they ran tempo the whole drive, like they didn't huddle up. They were just like tempo, 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 getting back on the ball, and they were saying that like it was 13 personnel, 12 personnel, like all grouped together, tight bunches, spread out. It was just different formations, but the same personnel on the field, the same three tight end sets, just grouped in together, different formations. And they were saying that like if you just keep up the tempo, the reason this offensive line has also been playing so well is because you got defensive linemen that got to get back on the ball and just like play after play after play. You can't really substitute like that, and that gets them tired. And then by the time you get halfway down the field into the red zone, those guys are so gassed that like you're moving them off the ball 3-4 yards at a time in the run game, which has also been obviously helping our run game out as well.
Yeah, like great example of that was the Cardinals' second touchdown run that they had, where they did not allow our defenders to get off the field.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
could see our guys were, especially on that play, they were tired, man. And that's what I put on Twitter. I was like, pitiful. Just it's not their fault. I mean, like playing in the NFL is freaking hard, man, especially continuously on a drive like that with how much you're running, what you're asked to do. But I'm just saying, like, just based on what happened on that play, and it was just a wide open run, it's just pitiful in my eyes. But look, we won 42-14. I can't get on too bad. Now we are joined by our next guest, the superstar himself, Mr. Street Scores Rico ATL. How you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Man, good to see y'all, man. Thank you for having me. How y'all feeling?
Feeling great. Well,
Feeling great.
we're
Haven't fellas great about the team in a while.
we're at the top of the NFC East, Street. I mean, there's really not much to complain about. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I completely agree. I mean, as far as my lifetime goes, This and the probably RG3 rookie season, but this just feels different. Like that, the RG3 rookie season got off to a really slow start, and I think we finished on like a 7-game win streak. But
Yep.
this is like, I don't think people really thought about RG3 in like MVP conversations. Like we're already talking
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels 4 weeks in.
Right. And it's funny. I try to tell people that all the time, like because they do hype up that season. I'm like, you got to remember there was a Code Red game that year, my man. But
Exactly.
Street, let's answer fan questions together if you're down for the next 30 minutes or so to wrap up this episode. And the Colonel is a personal huge fan of yours, and so I figured I would wait for you to get on here so you could be able to answer his question. His first
Yes,
question
sir.
is. Naturally, all the talk of late is the Commanders' interest in Davante Adams. I think everyone wants that to happen. We still have some holes in our defense, though. They played much better this past week. Are there any defensive players that we have similar interest in before the trade deadline, especially cornerback?
Yeah, for me, like, I mean, the Devonta Adams thing, fun doesn't equal always winning. Like, yeah, on paper, him joining us would be great, but I mean, just even comparing like how selfish he's been. I mean, for a reason, even though he was the reason that he left Green Bay. But Terry has had to deal with worse quarterback play within the same time span. At least he had Aaron Rodgers and he had a good Derek Carr season. Terry McLaurin has had nothing until these first 4 games. You could argue he's never complained. Meanwhile, Devontae Adams isn't giving it his all. So it's like a culture fit as well on top of the talent. And we've been screaming about Terry McLaurin not getting the ball the first couple of weeks. He finally starts getting the ball, and then we want to bring in another guy that's going to take away targets. It sounds fun, and like, of course, like especially if he's going for like a really low pick, it kind of feels like let's try it, but ultimately it doesn't make too much sense. But yeah, I feel like if anything, we need to trade for corner above all else. And I love the corners that we have, but I feel like everybody, if you just move them down the depth chart one spot, we're really solid at corner. We just need a true number one. I may be biased. I'm looking at J.C. Horn from the Carolina Panthers because he is from
Damn
Atlanta.
you, Street. Man. You
It
think
just
you
makes
think
too much sense.
you think Carolina would walk away from him? That's my only cog in this. Like I love J.C. Horn going into that draft class, and like I talked about him like it last year, the year before, saying that that's somebody I would really go after if they ever came available. But do you think that they would be able to walk away from him?
I don't know. I mean, they let us get away with Luvu and Chin.
That's true.
Maybe they. I mean, because technically this defensive staff didn't draft him, but I feel like he's one of the very few bright spots that they have, especially with all of the injuries that they have. But because of the injuries, maybe they're getting to the point, even with Andy Dalton seeming to somewhat save their season. They have so many guys that are like on season-ending injuries. They may just, chalk it up this year and just be sellers. And maybe we could get in low on J.C. Horn, just like how the 49ers, Adam Peters was probably a part of that, getting in low on Christian McCaffrey. Maybe we can do the same thing. Because J.C. Horn on this defense changes everything. Again, I love Benjamin St. Juste, but I feel like he shouldn't be covering Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans. He should be covering Chris Godwin, like the second guys on teams, and then we'd be really good to go.
Yeah, his body size obviously is a huge asset for this defensive staff going up against those bigger wide receivers. And like you said, Benji can't be the only guy capable of doing so. And we know this staff loves those kind of longer guys. And J.C. Horn, I know, would be willing to answer the call. I don't know about, like, honestly, it's hard to be able to answer this, Colonel, about what secondary, what defensive help we could be going after in a trade scenario, because typically teams are keeping this tight. Like, as soon as you know that they're willing to trade a guy is when you lose the leverage. They're not going to make it known that they have them available, right? So that's the one cog in this thing. But the one rebuttal I will have about Davante Adams is that going against teams like the Ravens, going against teams like the Steelers, Davante Adams would pay huge dividends in creating cushion for the running game and Jaden Daniels and the other wide receivers. It would create that you can't just not look at Davante. You have to take into consideration where he is and where he's going. And so it would help the offense going against those type of defenses at being able to say, you can't just look away from them, and that's where Terry might be able to operate just a little bit more, where Jaden could operate just a little bit more cleaner in his reads, going against these better defenses that we're going to be facing in the upcoming months, and possibly looking forward, because we're at the top of the NFC East. We got to think about playoff teams as well. And so that's just the one thing I would say about Davante, just on paper, straight up, as soon as he steps on the field, that's an asset for you to be able to add some more cushion on both in the running game and in the passing game. But obviously the assets attributed, I think the second round pick is too rich, and I think the Raiders are just probably asking for a little bit too much at that point. Just my personal opinion, but to answer your question, Colonel, mine was going to be J.C. Horn. Street Scores read my mind. So what about you, Hall?
Great minds think alike. And even to your point about Devontae Adams, I mean, yeah, like, because he would take the place, Terry McLaurin is like 90% of the time out wide on the left side, regardless of what's going on. He had to ask himself in that Bengals game to, hey, move me to the right side and just throw me the ball. Devontae Adams would take the place of that, and then Terry McLaurin would move the way that Olamide, Luke McCaffrey, Noah Brown have been moving, and that would free him up a little bit more. So it could work, but I agree, like, the assets it would take may not necessarily be worth it.
Yeah, I don't want to crap on our wide receivers that we have currently. They've done a fantastic job. They haven't dropped anything. I'm just more speaking of like the game plan aspect of it all and just how it could benefit just the extra like eyes on it. But I think that our wide receivers have been doing a great job thus far. Just personal opinion.
It sounds exactly what I said about Brandon Ayuk. But
yeah,
anyway,
but nobody's game planning for Brandon Ayuk. He was by himself, and Juwan Jennings outperformed him tenfold. I mean.
What do you mean? Juwan Jennings outperformed him because they're looking at Brandon Ayuk. That's why Juwan Jennings is so open.
10 targets. How many catches does he have?
I mean, yeah, if you're not getting the targets, you're not open because the other guy's so open. They're focusing on
I'm saying Brandon Ayuk got targeted 10 times that game.
Oh, well, hey, man, he's working back into things. He missed all offseason. But surprisingly, I mean, I don't really know like who's like out there defensive wise. Like I would say J.C. Horn, but I feel like Carolina, just because like the state that they're in, obviously they're probably going to be looking for another rookie quarterback at some point, that they're going to be picking so high in the draft. So even if they're going to have to pay a guy like J.C. Horn, like the money that he's going to command somewhere down the line, they'll be able to do that because they have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract. You're going to need those, even though they're rebuilding. Again, you're going to still need those building blocks to kind of build on top of. You can't just really start from scratch with no players. You need at least one star or superstar type player to kind of build off of that. So as much as I would love him, because like Street Score said, if he came here, everyone would move like on the cornerback list down one notch. And then I feel like the secondary would be a lot more balanced out. And like you said, a guy like J.C. Horn, shut down the number one or cover the number one and let everyone else do their own thing. That would be lovely. But yeah, I don't see the Devontae Adams thing happening, which for me, like you would probably think I'll be like, hell yeah, do that. But I just think that at this point, like you said, the assets it would take to give it up. I like a couple wide receivers coming out in this draft. They're going to be like top 2 round type of guys. So if they want to add them in the draft, I'd rather just go that route at this point because if you're not going to give up the assets for a guy that's younger and probably going to be the same amount of money because you're going to have to rework the contract for Devontae Adams and Brandon Ayuk before the season, why would you do it now whenever the offense is already kind of rolling and like you're already seeing like, okay, like we don't really have like the top tier talent, but maybe to this point we don't really need the top tier talent and we can add that in the offseason and going forward. So as much as I would love Devontae because he's still a top 5, top 10 type of receiver, one of the best dudes off the line as far as like getting off the line of scrimmage and getting down the field, 22 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. Like who would not want that on their team? It's just, I think at this point, trading for that kind of star-ish wide receiver, superstar wide receiver, we want to call him, I think that's kind of sale, and they're going to be more focused on paying the defense, building up the defense side of the ball, and like putting money on that side because they have a rookie quarterback. You can kind of spend money on that side of the ball now.
That's fair, and also with Devontae Adams' credit, I mean, he went from
he hates the DMV, so like
went from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr, then Derek Carr left, and then he got stuck with Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, just, you got to feel for the guy. And he continued to perform well, even though he was the only wide receiver literally out there for the Raiders. You can't say the same for Brandon Ayuk. Now,
I was just loving him to come here just so I can see him backtrack and be like, oh, I actually love the DMV and I love your fans.
And that's the one cog in this, though, Hall. To your point, that's the one cog because of his contract and where it is, teams are going to be reluctant to give up a lot in order with all that money. So what he would have to be willing is for a restructuring and to be able to come to a new contract, right? And so that's where the big cog is. Yeah, the Steelers and these other teams can make an offer, but is he willing to renegotiate his contract is the big difference maker I would ultimately see happening for him. Now, the next question we have from the Colonel Rico, given our starting success in the first 4 games, where on our schedule do you see the next big challenge, i.e. Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I think it definitively has to be the Ravens because even just looking at the schedule, like, I mean, I don't really see the Browns. I mean, they're going to be the more difficult defense that we've gone against, but they've also gone against bad offenses. And the one good offense they went against in the Cowboys, if you can even say that that's been good, they allowed, I think, like 32 points or
Yeah,
something
just
like
leave
that.
a
So the
mud
Browns,
stomping.
yeah, so the Browns defense is arguably tougher than what we faced so far, even though I would give the case that the Giants have a really good defense. But I don't really see them as much. And then offensively, Deshaun Watson is horrible right now. They're in third and longs all the time. They're never on schedule. So I feel like the Ravens the next week after that is definitely going to be our biggest test because they went up against the Bills, and I don't know what happens the first couple of weeks with the Ravens where they're just not focused, they're not tuned in. But once they kick things into gear, they look like one of the best teams in the NFL. They showed that against the Buffalo Bills a couple of days ago, and so that's clearly our biggest test. But luckily for us, though, we handled a lot of our road stuff early. We have the next month all in Maryland, including that Ravens game, so that's nice travel wise for the team.
Yeah, and did you guys see the video of Jerry Jones landing his helicopter on the Cowboys practice field in
Yeah,
the
what
middle of
was that?
practice?
What was that? That's something like recruiters do, like for high schoolers, like they're trying to bring them
Right.
to the. What did that do for grown men?
Right, I don't know, man. I guess Jerry was late to practice. I'm not really sure. I guess he was thinking that he was suiting up that day. I don't know. That I just thought that was really funny. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, literally stopping practice for you to come land your helicopter is kind of ridiculous.
What was that for?
Yam asked us this on Sunday, and honestly, I'm gonna be political about this. It's the Browns. I think you have to take this week by week. In my personal opinion, I don't think that we're necessarily good enough to be able to sit here and say we can overlook and say it's good. I think it's the NFL. Every week is a challenge, and it's so easy for things to go sideways on you. Like Zach had talked about with going 6-3. Alex Smith gets injured, and then boom, the season's gone, right? And also last season, we were 2-1 heading in, and then ended up going 4-13. So things can always go awry, and so you don't want this to be the start of the fall. So you have to work your ass off and consider it the most challenging team you're going to face this season every single week. Just stupid question, stupid answer. My bad.
No, I mean that's a good answer because I was going to say the Browns as well. Like roster wise, obviously it's going to be the Ravens because Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, just those two guys alone are probably the best two combo of quarterback, running back, or I guess they don't really have like a top wide receiver, but quarterback, running back duo, top offensive duo we've probably faced since probably Baker and like Godwin and Mike Evans.
Evans,
So
yeah.
I would say that it's definitely roster wise it would be the Ravens, but I would say the Browns just because like we talked about earlier, this team is like the national media darling, the talk of the NFL right now. They're how are they going to handle this success? How are they going to handle all these talking heads, all these people talking about him, propping him up, giving him all this praise, and are they really looking ahead to a team like Baltimore, who's next on the schedule, who everyone already said like, oh, this needs to be a primetime game, this needs to be flex, blah 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 blah, like two superstar quarterbacks or two-star quarterbacks, like this is going to be the matchup of the one of the best matchups of the early season. So are they looking ahead to next week and kind of just looking at the Browns like, they haven't been that good this season. Like we can just kind of walk past them, get ready for the Ravens. So I would say, yeah, I would say the Browns just because they're the ones that are right in front of them this week. You got to focus on the Browns and not get too big headed and stay level headed, not focus on the big matchup against the Ravens next week. Focus on Myles Garrett and that defense and the Browns.
To your point, this is something I honestly believe, and I've said this before on here. To gauge how good of a team Washington is how they play the Ravens. When they play, how they play the Ravens in the regular season is when you typically know how good that team is. And we know in 2012 they were able to beat them in the same game that RG3 got hurt in, right? But like that's the sort of thing you got to think about here looking forward. Obviously, you're right. This is going to be a very, very tough matchup. That's a very good football team. But just being political about it, it's every single week, in my personal opinion.
It's a week to week league. You can't really be looking ahead.
Now, Street, the next question. This is similar to what the Colonel asked. But Tim Towner in the Discord asks, way too early to have this conversation, but imagine as the year progresses, we actually find ourselves as contender for the playoffs. And if we needed one more player to put us over the top, what would be that position of need? Would you still say corner?
Yes, sir. I would say corner, but to give an additional answer, just to not, make sure, we answer everybody's questions well. I would say the backup one, I mean, I mean that's tough. But I am looking at maybe like linebacker help because I'm waiting for Jordan McGee to come back healthy. But even then, like he's a fifth round rookie. He missed a lot of training camp. We can't expect him to come back day one and immediately contribute, even though Lubu was praising him a lot during training camp. And then I'm loving what Lubu and Wagner are doing pretty much in every facet of the game except for coverage. I would like a guy that can come in and help with coverage. And also, just can we get another guy to give those guys a breather? I mean, I know linebackers play a lot of snaps, but there have been games so far this season where Lubu or Wagner, back and forth, all 59 of the 59 defensive snaps that they've been out there. So I would just like another linebacker. I mean, I wish they would allow. I still don't understand how Jamin Davis went from being a really good, I felt like a pretty good second linebacker to he can't even get on the field as an off-ball linebacker. They occasionally, as an edge rusher, ask him to go back in coverage, but I don't see why he's not out there as off-ball linebacker. So if you can maybe find a guy that could just at least give Wagner and Lubu a breather especially until Jordan McGee develops into the guy that they hope he becomes.
Yes, I will not say corner for this, and I won't say wide receiver either. I'm going to shock you there, Hall. I will say it's edge. And the reason I say that is if you are going to, let's just say the playoff contender kind of thing, where you don't want to be looking ahead, but just to answer your question, we do kind of have to do that. I think being able to have consistent and constant pressure on the quarterback, especially with a speed kind of rusher, is something that if you really wanted to go over top, that's something that you're going to need to dedicate. Because just imagine you're able to add one of those kind of edge defenders, like somebody like Max Crosby, for example. That's another set of eyes you have to keep over there. And Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and company are able to do more work. They're able to get more one-on-one matchups on those pass rushing situations. So to get you over the top, I think somebody of really good caliber of a rusher, a pass rusher, a position of need that you could be looking at.
Yep, I was gonna say edge as well, just because
Damn.
I feel like I would love a corner also, but if you don't have the pressure on the cornerback is pretty much just you can't cover forever. You know what I'm saying? Like you're gonna need a guy coming off the edge to get after the quarterback, make him always kind of think like, or always feel that pressure in the pocket. Like, let me move around, let me do this, let me adjust to help out the secondary to give him that extra half a step of coverage to maybe jump a ball or do something like that, bat a ball down. So, and like I said earlier, a not even like a true dominant edge, but just a guy that can win his one-on-one matchups or deserves like a double team that can also relieve the pressure in the middle for guys like Mathis, Payne, Allen, and Newton to possibly win their one-on-one battles and then get that interior pressure going. So, and I just think that like people like look back whenever we had a better top, whatever we want to call it, defense with Ron Rivera in them, it was because you had Montez Sweat and whoever else was on the edge coming off opposite him, coming off those edges. So it was like, okay, we got to attribute something to Montez Sweat. Now Payne and Allen are like, I can beat you on one, boom, get to the quarterback. So I think that an edge would definitely help this team out, and it would help the secondary out as well.
Absolutely. Street, the next question we have is from Deluxe. It's a really good one. Week over week growth is the story of this team. What is the next step you are looking for on offense and then defense?
On offense, for sure, consistency. Like going into the Cardinals game, I wanted to see continued success, even though we're not going to expect our quarterback to have a 91.3 completion
Right.
percentage 2 games in a row. I mean, how dare he go from 2 incompletions to 4 incompletions and
I
an
know. He
interception?
needs to be better, man.
Gotta be. I don't know what happened to him, but
It's falling
but
off.
I just love the fact that going, just to go, take a step back from the question for a second. To the fact that he threw that interception, the way he bounced back made me far more confident in him than if he
Right.
just never threw an interception. To where we're just like, yo, what's gonna happen when he does have an imperfect game? And then he finally had that interception where it was like a good read, but just a bad throw. It was just an accurate throw. It was too high, a little late, and things like that. And I just feel like the way he bounced back from that, fully confident, he didn't get too skittish to where, some guys make a mistake, now they're afraid of making the next one, or some guys try to overcompensate and do too much and end up causing more mistakes in return. I felt like he perfectly bounced back from that. And I just feel like as an overall offense, how consistent can we be with defenses trying different things against us? So I feel like the Cardinals played us differently than how the Bengals did. I want to see what the Browns do. Now we're going against arguably the best pass rusher in Myles Garrett that we've gone against all season. How do they adjust to that? Do we shift the offensive line more? Does the running back chip more? Do we keep an extra tight end to chip more that side compared to previous games as well? So I just want to see versus how each defense plays against us, we consistently find a way to win advantageously on the offensive side. And then the defensive side just get better. I feel like even schematically, we weren't much better against the Cardinals than like the Bengals. I just feel like guys gave more effort. Now having Emmanuel Forbes back, I'm not acting like he's like a top corner, but he helped. He had good coverage at times. He set the edge
Strap
against the
City,
run one
man.
time. He set the edge one really good time against the run where Jeremy Chin was the one that everybody noticed made the play, but it was Emmanuel Forbes that allowed him to make that play. So
Yeah.
his impact was felt. But I feel like ultimately it really just seemed like Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne tried harder. Jonathan Allen had like a tackle 8 yards down the field, and really that's only been Johnny Newton up until the Cardinals game that was given extra effort every snap that he was on the field. And I just feel like everybody played more physical, if anything. So I just need the defense to continue that mentality. And I feel like the offense being so great kind of lets everybody, especially on the defensive side of the ball, buy in. I think that's big. And then my last thing, going back to offense, I want these receivers and the tight ends, running backs to continue to block well. The first 2 weeks they were terrible, well, especially the receiver group were terrible at blocking for others. Like even Terry McLaurin wasn't blocking well when somebody else would get the screen. When he would catch a screen against the Giants, they wouldn't block well for him, and that's why a lot of those plays ended up being negative plays. And then you notice against the Cardinals, we only had one negative play. I feel like a big reason for that was the blocking on the outside by the receivers. I want to see that continue to grow as well.
I absolutely love it. For me personally on offense, it's for Jaden. The one thing that you can always hear the analysts and commentators say is you never throw high over the middle. If you are going to throw an incompletion in over the middle, you throw it low because that way nobody has a chance to be able to catch the football, right? And that's probably one area that the offense overall can get better in. But ultimately, it's hard to kind of they're first, they're first in red zone percentage. They're third in points per game. They're 12th in passing yards. They're third in rushing yards, and they're first on third down percentage. And so it's hard to be able to say what they truly need to get better in. But I would imagine that it's just those sort of little instances where you just have to be a little bit smarter and just being able to know what you can and cannot do. The wide receivers are catching everything. The running backs are freaking tough. They are attacking, and they are being overly aggressive in their run style. Everyone is blocking well at this point. So at this point, the growth is consistent and sustained success on the ground. And so that's all I would say. And then defensively, it's without a doubt turnovers. You can be a bend but don't break defense, but if you are going to do that, you need to convert some turnovers, and you need to be able to do that. And Frankie Louisville obviously contributed with that forced fumble last week. That's something that has to continue. Not, obviously, you want that in every game, but just being able to force those turnovers with the aggressiveness and knowing when to do it and when not to. This, if you give the ball back to this offense, that's a success. That's a win. So those two are for me.
Yeah, like you said, the offense, like obviously they haven't been perfect, but they've been like great up to this point. So I would just say for the offense to just sustain the consistency of running the football, converting on third downs, and I would just say for Cliff to keep evolving the offense, keep staying one step ahead of the defensive coordinators and the defenses, because the rap on Cliff has always been, or not always, but leading up to this point has always been his offense for the first month, 6 weeks, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Shot out of a cannon, great offense, putting up crazy numbers, crazy yards, crazy points. And then as the season goes on, it kind of wears off, and they fall off a cliff. So for a Cliff and the offense as a whole, just remain consistent and keep evolving the offense and staying one step ahead of the opposing defenses. And
nice play on words there.
Yeah, the Cliff. I
Yeah,
never thought
that
of that. Cliff Kingsbury.
But defensively, I would say, like Kyle, I would say they got a couple turnovers last week, or one turnover, whatever it was. But I would say just keep creating turnovers for the offense to get more chances, more cracks at the apple on the field. And this has been my thing from the get-go. Now that they're scoring all these points, obviously they're not going to score 30, 40 points every week, but just keep putting points on the board and putting pressure on the opposing defense, because I feel like to have success and going forward this season, I think our best defense is going to be a good to great offense. So just keep putting pressure on the other defenses, converting third downs, putting points on the board, whether it's 3 or 7. Just put points on the board, control the time of possession, and I think that it'll be a good season.
My man. Now let's go rapid fire to answer these last couple ones. This one from Big Tony Shivers. Street, Thoughts on the kickoff and the rare punt coverage? I feel like they have been swarming to the ball from day one and serving big hits.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm sad to see Tyler Owens get a little banged up there, but I thought it was really notable that like we had tight ends against the
Yeah,
Cardinals,
Sinan
the
had a
ones
crazy
rolling down.
hit.
Yeah, like that was really nice. They've been blocking really well. I mean, Vincent hasn't been featured as the pass catcher that, I believe he definitely will be one day. But right now he's in on special teams. He's blocking and everything. And I think special teams is only going to get better. I mean, even just to get away from the question for a second, Austin Eckler was returning like crazy before he got hurt. He was a big time returner for us, so I can't wait to get him back. And yeah, special teams coverage, they've been hitting. I feel like we're going to miss Tyler Owens a little bit if he's banged up, but Jeremy Reeves has been handling it. The tight ends have been doing a good job. Everybody's been contributing. Seems like it's a different guy every time, too. It hasn't just been one guy every time. So I love that it's a team effort. Hiring Larry Izzo definitely has seemed to produce some results here.
Absolutely agree with you. And somebody pointed out on Twitter on the film breakdown I did of Jeremy Reeves on that one return, Tyler Owens is getting doubled by these teams. So when he is in punt coverage, they're doubling him, and it's kind of crazy to see 4 games in for Tyler Owens. Hopefully he's able to continue to success here. And thank you, Tony. Now the next question, Hall from Scott Hartley in the UK. Oi, in the 1 Point Safety Show. How good can this O-line become, and do you think they're getting the credit they deserve?
I think they're starting to get the credit they deserved. Everyone, including like local fans, media, national people, that was one of the biggest concerns going into this was, are they going to be able to protect Jaden Daniels, and are they going to be able to be efficient enough to have a decent shot at being a good offense this year? And I do think that hats off to Bobby Johnson, hats off to Anthony Lynn with the run game, drawing stuff up, scheming stuff up. Hats off to Cliff for obviously calling the plays and getting guys in the best positions. And definitely hats off to the O lineman because, I mean, even like if you really go back to last year, honestly, whenever Jacoby Brissett came in the game, you could kind of see flashes of the offensive line being like, okay, well, maybe they're not really as bad as we're making it seem out to be because Jacoby's moving the ball. Seems like perfectly fine, even though it wasn't like cleanup stuff. But I just feel like they're finally they're guys that are gelling together, and then like the more they play together, the more reps they get together, the better they'll be. And I think that the best is yet to come.
Yeah, the big boys, as former offensive lineman and defensive lineman, we don't need much credit. We just need the quarterback to stay healthy, to keep slinging the rock, and as long as they're one of the top teams in points per game, that's all the credit they need. They just need those dubs, man. That's what big boys feast on is
I
dubs.
will say one real quick, running the ball, I think is like really like rejuvenated like guys like Wiley and Cosme, guys who are on this line because you could just tell last year they looked like they hated their jobs, hated coming to work. But
They
I feel
couldn't
like
wear their
running,
hats backwards, wouldn't you?
yeah, it's true. Running the ball and like really like road grading guys and moving guys off their spot. I feel like that really like obviously motivates them, and I feel like I said, the best is yet to come.
My man. Now let's one of us we're gonna pick one of these. This one from Jeff Miles in the Discord. Way too early Pro Bowl candidates. Obviously it is too early. So one each. Street, who do you got?
I mean, is Jaden Daniels like an easy cop out?
Yeah, but you can use it, of course. He deserves it.
I'll go outside of Jaden. I'm gonna go. I feel like even though he hasn't played, I'm gonna go Nick Allegretti because he's actually been playing
Okay.
really well. I'm gonna go Nick Allegretti right now.
Big boy myself, I'd say Tyler Biadasz, but I have to go with my boy Terry McLaurin. He's competing his ass off with a lot said about him being not a number 1 wide receiver. Coming through when it needs to, I think Terry McLaurin deserves it.
It's a good one. I'll say Austin Eckler, even though he hasn't got the touchdown yet. Like I feel like at one point he's going to get the special teams return touchdown on a kickoff, maybe a couple this year. So I feel like because has there even been any like returns this year? I can't even really think of one.
I
But
think one team did in week 1 or 2. I can't remember exactly who
yeah,
it was.
I feel like maybe it was like one or two. But I feel like Eckler's going to break one or two eventually at some point. He's already basically done that. He got tackled, and then
I think it
there's a
might have been
penalty
the
on one.
Bills.
Yeah, I remember at least one of them happening. But I think special teams wise, Austin Eckler.
My man. Any more? Honorable mention: Brian Robinson running his damn ass off.
I feel like that was an easy one too because he's like having like a breakout season. So, but yeah, definitely Bree up for sure.
200-yard games already for him.
Yeah, Bobby Wagner leading the team in tackles both times. Obviously, that might naturally come into fruition if the team continues to have success. But last question that we have is from Jeff. Street, is this Brandon Coleman's chance to officially stamp his position as left tackle starter, or would you have to see more?
If he does well against Myles Garrett, even though he's a little banged up on injury report, I feel like we can start to move that way. Now, maybe don't play him the entire game yet, but I think so far, even in the Cardinals game, I think Cornelius Lucas still technically started, may have even had more snaps. It was really close. I don't remember. I didn't see the snap count for the Cardinals game, but the Bengals game, I know Cornelius Lucas had one more snap than him.
It was basically 50-50, if I can remember correctly.
Okay. So, yeah, that maybe this is like the game where he officially maybe has like 5 to maybe 10 more snaps, but I don't see him playing full time just yet. But I think this is a big test. He does well against Myles Garrett. They're definitely going to look at him differently moving forward.
Yeah, and that's a big question for Cleveland's defensive coordinator on how they want to deploy Myles Garrett. Do they want to have him on Wiley, or do they want to go after the left tackles and Cornelius Lucas and Brandon Coleman? Ultimately, I think it's up to Cornelius Lucas and how he plays in this game. I don't think it's much more so up to Brandon Coleman. I think that we have seen enough at this point. But Cornelius Lucas is doing a great job in itself. The offense is humming right now. You don't really want to make that many changes until you ultimately have to. So we'll see how they come out into the game. Obviously, I think I like what they're doing. It's working. So we'll let the cards play out but continue to do his business.
Yeah, I would say if it's not broke, don't fix it up to this point. But to Rico's point, I think that if Coleman has a pretty good outing against Myles Garrett or JOK, whoever's coming off the edge against him when he's lined up and matched up against him, I do think that it'll be like, okay, he's been battle tested enough to this point where we can start kind of shifting it from 50-50 to like maybe like 60-40 Coleman, and then eventually 70-30, and then not only think it'll get to 70-30, I think it'll be like 60-40 for a while, and then it'll eventually, like the back half of the season, it'll be all Coleman. So I do think that it's not really like big this year or this week, but I do think this is definitely a what do you call it? A litmus test for Coleman and how far he is in his development.
Yeah, he has the body mass to be able to go up against Myles Garrett. The question is, does he have the speed and the strength to be able to withhold those power rushes that he does have? All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Street, you're the man for being able to come through. It's been a little bit, but I'm glad it's on a good situation. Typically, we're talking about something bad.
We're not talking about the draft already.
Right, but Street, before we get out of here, if you'd just like to plug your show and your Twitter handle, just in case anybody watching hasn't followed you yet, brother.
Yes, sir. You can find me on YouTube, Street Scores, and on Twitter, Street Scores ATL. Man, thanks for having me as always. Like I say, every time I come in here, I always learn something, so I love coming on here. Just let me know next time. I know I'm super busy. I've been all over the place, but definitely let me know.
Absolutely, brother. And everybody listening, watching this, try to hype up your coworkers this week heading in, like Frankie Louvu doing the hot gun in the locker room. We need that again this weekend. We need Frankie Louvu doing that on the field for everybody on Sunday to get hyped up. Just do it for your coworkers. Just send the week out right. Work your butt off. All right,
we should start doing it in the crowd whenever like a touchdown, like a big play happens. We should do like the clap, like woo, like the Ric Flair jump. We should start at the
double clap Ric Flair
at the stadium. Yeah, double clap Ric Flair.
Or we should do the suck it. Yeah, dude, we should totally do that, especially against Deshaun Watson. Let's start that out against him. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. I appreciate you all for tuning in. If you made it this far, you're a frickin' champion. We'll see you guys again on Sunday after the game against the Browns. We'll see you then.
We need to do the predictions.
Oh, okay, real quick, predictions. Street, I'm sorry, I know you got to go, but what do you got?
Oh, no, it's good. I'm fine. I have 31-17. I'm just that confident. I think their offense is that bad.
Blowout.
Oh, very good. Very good situation. I will say 38-21, and I do think that the special teams comes through big time for the Washington Commanders this week. I think that's something you could rely on. They've been biting at the bit, getting closer and closer to this possibility. I think that something finally does rip off here and do well for them.
Yeah, I got it a little bit lower scoring and a little bit closer game. I think that it'll be 27-21, but we pull it out by 6.
Wow, you're actually predicting a win this week.
I was going to go the opposite way, but I'm feeling the high.
You know what I'm going to say? I'm not going to say it on air, but you know what I would say to that because we're not going to jinx anything. You know what I'm saying?
I got what you're putting down.
All right, good. We're not going to put that in the atmosphere. We're keeping that in the house. All right, everybody. We'll see you again on Sunday evening. Have a great weekend. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.